So thank you, panelists, for joining us today. We're certainly happy to have you, and thank you for taking your time. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our panel discussion and our questions and answers. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions. We received a lot of great questions when you RSVP'd for the event, and we hope to cover as many of your questions and the topics in the next hour. We will be posting additional resources on our website, coloradoproud.org, in the coming days, as we can't cover every question that we received. But if you do have additional questions or ideas that aren't addressed during the roundtable, please email one of our team members and we'll do our best to help you and point you in the right direction. So panelists, are you ready to start? Great. So my first question really is for all of you, and we'll start with Pete and then Rosalind and then Duke, and follow up with Commissioner Kate Greenberg. But the question is, how are you or the industry that you're a part of, how have you situation and how are you adapting? So Pete, we'll go ahead and get started with you.
Thanks. Thanks, Wendy, and Colorado Proud and all the panelists and everybody who's dialed in. You know, the first thing I have to say is that COVID almost seems trivial all of a sudden. I just have to say that it's a lot of adaptation happening in addition to this whole other thing we're dealing with. So we've made a lot of changes to our business model. We've changed our shifting to allow for distancing among the staff and to keep staff out of the store while customers are in the store. So we've gone basically to a 24-hour schedule, except at our Uptown store, we're now closing for team safety. You know, the whole supply chain has had to adapt to this. We saw incredible, unprecedented demand for a few weeks in a row, just totally unexpected, like a Christmas week every day for 20 days. And, you know, people were really in a lot of fear. And so we've to how we pay for healthcare, staff compensation, you know, just a variety of ways people safe through sneeze guards, obviously wearing masks, and that's kind of crazy. But really, you know, the resilience of our entire supply chain has been amazing. Particularly, you know, we have a very differentiated supply chain from a lot of our competitors, and that has held up incredibly well. So, you know, mostly related to safety and safety. And, you know, we have just been focused on our mission of keeping people safe, keeping people fed, keeping people paid. And we, thankfully, because of a great supply chain, great team, we've been able to do that.
Great, thanks, Pete. And Pete, I think we're getting a little bit of a technical issue with your their audio and video, so we'll keep an eye on that as we go forward. Rosalind, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to this community and to the members of the media who have come here to take the time to focus on agriculture. Thank you, it's really important. So with farmers markets in Colorado, there's been a lot of adaptation, and that began with collaborative efforts, working with the Department of Agriculture, working with the governor's office, farmers markets being declared essential business as part of the food and agriculture supply chain in Colorado. And that was not a given. Not every state had that right off the bat, and that possibility of opening farmers markets very quickly, or that decision very quickly. And so the Colorado Farmers Market Association has worked in collaboration with the CDA, with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and CFMA has developed recommendations and toolkits for farmers markets on how to operate safely during COVID-19. We've developed those in collaboration with CDPHE with feedback from local public health agencies. And so that's, so we've had this really wonderful collaborative effort that's meant that we have this set of guidelines that market managers around the state have been proactive. They were proactive even before those recommendations came out, asking, well, what do we do about this? How can we make things work under these circumstances? We've been informed a lot by the experiences of other states that had markets opening earlier than we did. Where CFMA is connected with the National Farmers Market Coalition, and we've learned a lot from other places that went through this in February, March, and really helped inform some of these protocols. So markets are adapting by ensuring social distancing at markets, so more space between vendor booths, depending on the size of the markets, limiting the number of people in the market at a time or the number of people at vendor booths. We have outdoor shopping at farmers markets, so you have fresh air and sunshine in people's shopping environment. Vendors are setting things up so that some things are pre-bagged so that customers can purchase things more efficiently. Vendors are having people point to what they want for produce rather than customers needing to touch the produce. And so you've just only had the person you're purchasing from having handled the produce. It's a change in the nature of farmers markets. I think we often think of farmers markets as being social gatherings and live music and events and all sorts of things like that. And it really, this has brought farmers markets to the essential nature of what a farmers market is, that this is a retail business where people can go to access the freshest, highest quality local food, and where farmers and other food producers can sell what they grow and produce. And so that's been really important to, I think, recognizing that and recognizing it's become really clear how essential farmers are that farmers are essential, and farmers markets providing a place for farmers to sell. So it is absolutely an adaptation. For market managers are working very hard to make sure that they can operate markets safely. Vendors are adapting, customers are adapting, and so far there's definitely challenges. There's definitely things that we would all want to be better, but we've had a smooth opening of farmers markets so far in Colorado, and that is due in large part to the collaborative effort to make sure that markets can open.
Thanks, Rosalind. Duke, would you like to chime in here?
Thank you, Wendy, and everyone behind Colorado Proud, kind of behind the scenes. Even on a Zoom call, it's a production, I think, to get people together and on the same page. So appreciate you taking the time and including us. I guess our perspective is a little bit different. Oftentimes it feels like we're on the outside looking in. Our closest grocery store is about 45 minutes to town, and any population density is about that same distance. So out on the ranch, we don't have a whole lot of interaction. So it's a kind of different thing. So it's a time where we feel very fortunate to be on the outside, but we also really feel for everyone who's having to adapt and take on these different practices in town. It can be a very difficult business on the producer, and I know farmers and ranchers, we're dependent on the weather and you can't control it. And then any other variables they throw at us, the world hands to us, we kind of have to deal with it. And this is just a big case of that happening. As far as our business changing, we really felt the squeeze in April. We had a lot of cattle committed to the system to be processed. And there is a window that you're working with before your costs go up and cattle can age out. And we came up to the time and they told us, we can't take your animals. So we finally did get them taken, which was a huge relief. And that's something we're looking to the future to try to avoid, trying to look at the the supply chain from our end and figure out how we can most efficiently use it and not be kind of up against a deadline, a hard deadline, without a place to go with our product. That's kind of the scariest thing for me. And then the other part of our business, we try to diversify, going back to the weather, the markets, pandemics now, trying to put as many legs on the table as we possibly can. So if one leg gets damaged or knocked off, we still have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, or hopefully as many as possible, kind of to keep us propped up, to keep our product hopefully in the food chain, and keep our employees happy and healthy and employed. So I think that's it for me.
Great. Thank you, Duke. And Kate.
Thanks, Wendy, and huge thanks to you and our team for putting this event together. Really excited for the work that Colorado Proud has been able to do through this time. I'd say that's one example of adaptability. Actually, even the logo we see behind you was a outcome of COVID, and our early response and your immediate response to how do we build greater market opportunities, greater promotional opportunities. Sorry, I can't keep my cat off the screen. He loves the screen. But how do we support our producers during COVID? And really the work you do to promote Colorado Proud and our producers has been, I'd say, one big point of adaptability. I mean, Duke and Rosalind, you described so much of what we've been seeing all across the state, of course. In terms of the changes that have had to been made in agriculture. They've been many, and it's been a quick to pivot across the board. Of course, this is not just, market channels and new distribution networks and figuring out if you're going to actually be able to move your cattle, or if you're going to actually be able to have your farmer's market. It's also all of the operational changes that we've now got to do in our facilities, PPE, social distancing, new guidances, and really for business owners rethinking, like Pete, rethinking what your staffing plan looks like and how you keep your people safe but keep your doors open. There's been incredible adaptability up and down our businesses in Colorado to make those both ends meet. Of course, at CDA, Wendy, we've had a lot of changes too, predominantly telework. We're going digital for almost everything, but we've had an incredible continuity of service, and that's been our focus, is how can we keep serving our people, serving Colorado ag from afar, keep our relationships up, but keep each other safe and healthy, and that's been the goal, and that's what our whole team has done to date.
Thanks, Kate, and Colorado Proud certainly appreciates your continued support of our efforts as well. And following some of what you've already talked about, Kate, this is sort of a big question, but what lasting changes do you see resulting from the dramatic shifts that we've seen this past spring? And what are the key things we've learned as producers and consumers from this experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wendy. I think early on, we saw, a massive pivot in the food supply chain when restaurants were shut down and food service shut down. We all of a sudden had, it wasn't a shortage. Folks were worried about a shortage, but it was a backup and a pivot to a new point of demand. So when we all started getting all of our food at the grocery stores, the entire chain back down to, to Duke on the production level, had to pivot to meet that new demand. So we've seen in that time a sort of parallel track of greater direct-to-consumer demand. I know a lot of folks who are, sold out of their halves and wholes on beef well before they normally are and can't keep up with demand. A lot of folks, building interest in buying directly from their farmer or rancher. Hopefully with the work that we're all doing, that's going to stick. I think to your second question, what have we learned from this? I think we've seen some vulnerabilities in our system. Doesn't mean it's all going to change overnight, but I think it's got folks thinking about how do we build a more resilient system that supports our producers, it supports our workers, it supports everybody throughout the supply chain. Of course, down to Pete's end of the supply chain where our grocery shopping is done, and really thinking local, thinking about supporting family business and thinking about buying direct. I see as COVID-related trends. Of course, they were trends beforehand, but they've spiked during COVID. Our hope now is that we keep that momentum going well beyond the end of COVID-19.
Thanks, Kate. And Duke, I think you touched on this a little bit already in terms of diversification, but if you could go a little bit more into why diversification is an important strategy for adapting and sustaining really not only during the COVID, but I think you were doing a lot of this before the situation, so that how it has helped your business.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. I guess our business, everything we're able to produce comes from the land, not in a farming sense with cattle or cropping, but in any kind of income we can create. And in the past, we've set it up to welcome guests out to our ranch, so kind of farm stays, guest ranch, dude ranch, kind of whatever you want to call it, working ranch vacation is the term we choose. Inviting people out, and it not only does it create this secondary level of income, but it also kind of builds a constituency and takes kind of what Kate was saying further, and making people aware. You know, we are out here. Farmers and ranchers are important. What we think we're doing is important on a lot of levels, and kind of getting people to know producers, because a lot of times it seems like there's a wall between the urban and rural communities, and anything we can do to kind of build bridges over that wall or break through that wall and get collaborative effort going forward is fantastic. So the hospitality kind of does both of those things. The other business that we diversified into is a leather mercantile. It started as just a saddle shop where we repaired our own gear, and has kind of snowballed into more of that. And it's still definitely a fledgling business. But during the COVID, which we do this typically for drought and market, but with the COVID, it kind of killed our hospitality in a big way. So that business is kind of reeling on its own. But what we've really tried to focus on is it's retail, essentially trying to build that business to make sure we can keep the lights on, keep our bills paid, and people happy. Looking forward, there's a lot of diversification that we've been talking about. Again, like Kate said, there were weaknesses that we were aware of, but the magnitude of those weaknesses really became apparent during this COVID. So we're really looking at the channels that we're selling to and actively trying to diversify on that end as well. So every possible diversification we can do moving forward is going to be looked at.
Great. Thanks, Duke. Rosalind, we talked a little bit about how farmers markets and producers and ranchers, what they've been doing to innovate and adjust their business during this, this pandemic. But if you could expand on that a little bit more, and also I know the markets have already started, and maybe tell a few stories of what you've been hearing from the markets, what has been going well, their experiences with opening and dealing with consumers, challenges they may be still facing. That would be great.
Sure. I'll start with the first part of your question about ways that particularly direct marketing farmers and ranchers have been pivoting in this time. They've seen alongside farmers markets a few things. So a number of farmers markets have developed online ordering platforms where they aggregate for their vendors and get those distributed to customers in a pickup model that with some was before the market opened, some alongside of that. Also, individual producers have been developing online pre-ordering so that, and whether that's for pickup at their farm, or quite a few are doing that for pickup at the market, again, to facilitate sales and have pre-orders and make things go more quickly and smoothly at the markets. Also, and producers and farmer co-ops that were already doing home delivery were really poised to pivot and meet that need for more food at home to be delivered at home. So that piece of online sales and home delivery has been a really important and growing thing at this time. As far as markets and how things are going and how things are opening, there's let's see. I mean, the reports from market managers are that by and large, customers are cooperating and collaborating and supportive of what's needed and wearing masks and distancing. Not everyone, but by and large, people are. I spoke with one market manager in the Denver area whose markets opened early. Metro Denver Farmers Markets opened early in May, and the market manager was just delighted at how happy people were to be out in the sunshine, outside. Even if they couldn't linger at the market, they were just delighted to be out there and really appreciative of that. The Durango Farmers Market opened a couple of weeks ago, and the report from there is that vendors found that their sales weren't the same as they would have been on a typical opening day, but they were far better than they expected under the circumstances. So we're seeing, you know, things are challenging, but we still have people coming out to support farmers and ranchers, other food producers at our farmers markets. And yeah, so that's, I mean, and another market, farmers, there's the small market in Paonia, Arbo Farm Market, their first day, their food vendors all sold out. Was an exciting thing for them. So I think some things across the board, some farmers are having really, really fantastic sales, real commitment to the community and people going out and purchasing, and many are seeing reduced sales than they would usually expect at farmers markets. But I think understanding the circumstances that we're in and what it takes for the markets to be operating at all, it's been a tremendous effort for market managers to make that happen, and with the collaboration of all these many different agencies and with vendors. And the thing about it is that there's been support, tremendous amount of support for local food demand and support for it now. And as Kate said, keeping that up. And I want to encourage people to figure out how to do your grocery shopping from your local farmers, and whether that's signing up for a CSA or whether that's going to Marzick's and purchasing from local producers that have product there, and absolutely certainly go to your farmers market, and not just to pick up one thing, but see how much you can get there of your food, because our local farmers and ranchers are the ones who can provide us with food if there's disruptions in supply chains, when there's crisis, when there's challenge. And the more that we can go and support them and purchase from them now, the stronger those farms and ranches will be, and the stronger our food system will be in the future.
Great, thanks, Rosalind. And I think you really set the stage for our next question for Pete, in how we can tell the story of local food without events or interactions with producers or sampling or in-person experiences. So we have some challenges there that we can't be together maybe like we're used to. So Pete, what's some of your feedback on how we can tell that story of local food?
Well, I hope this is a little better quality. I'm sorry. You know, I think we have a saying at our company, which is "Show me, don't tell me." I think the local food scene is showing our people what we can do, and we've had so many customers, new people come into the market that just didn't want to deal with chaos elsewhere, and get everything here. They'd never been in, you know, they just hadn't had an experience like a small market and a differentiated supply chain. And I think, you know, I think the Colorado producers and a lot of our home-owned businesses are really showing these people in a way that is very visceral and very real. So I sort of think that the story is playing out. I work with a lot of many of my peer colleagues and competitors. We've been talking about how different our shoppers are right now. They're not comparing the price of a locally produced box of greens to a Cal Organic, say. They're just not thinking about that. They want to get fed, they want to get nurtured, they want to be nourished, and we're able to do that in a way that is highly differentiated from the national supply chain stuff. And so I think that one of the great outcomes here will be that people have been introduced to, maybe through necessity. There's been a lot of stuff. There's been holes in our supply chain from the big suppliers that are completely backfilled in areas by our more close in vendors have just totally filled that gap. And again, it's more demonstration than telling somebody forever, this is local, it's important, it matters. It's like, can I get it? Yes, you can get it. We have it. I'll be right there. I mean, we never ran out of eggs. We didn't run out of arugula. We haven't been out of meat. It's been really inspiring and really powerful. But I think that, food is such a powerful thing in our lives. And I think so many people took it for granted until it's not available, until you can't get what you want. And now people have to start to see what's happening. I think it's really changed people's attitudes. We've had people got me, I get it now. And so, 18, 19 years, staying, talking, it's in people's guts, literally, in a way that it wasn't before. I think there will be some room. I think there's some space that's been created for people to really appreciate what we do and what all you do in a way that's not available for. It's on radar, and it's on the radar.
Thanks, Pete. Kate, I'm going to come back around to you now and shifting gears a little bit. But how have the farm workers and other ag laborers been impacted by COVID, and what's being done to ensure their health and safety?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. And that's a big question. And of course, another, as we're talking about kind of the pieces of our supply chain that have been exposed throughout COVID-19, I think the workers and the conditions that workers are in and kind of the challenges that our workers all across the supply chain face are really front and center as well. And now, of course, we've got folks in facilities, we've got folks out in the field, coming in for the season. Acquisition of PPE has been a big one. Social distancing. There's been a lot of challenges with social distancing in facilities where, your architecture doesn't allow you to adequately social distance. So how do you adapt? Thinking about changes in line speed, putting up plexiglass between folks. It takes a lot of overhaul on the business side to really think through how you protect your workforce, but it's absolutely critical. We've been working through the state, through the Emergency Operations Center, as well as through a lot of advocacy in DC to get sufficient PPE out to ag workers and farm workers all across the state. That's of course because bottom line, we care about these people, everybody across our supply chain. We care about every single person who's growing food, raising food. And we also don't have a food supply chain if we don't have the people doing the work. So it's been a big effort federally at the state level as well to make sure we're getting adequate supplies out to folks. There's recent guidance. Actually, I think just today it was released, draft guidance from the Department of Labor. We're working on finalizing draft guidance to make sure that our workforce is protected and that workers, whether they're permanent or migrant for the season, have access to sufficient resources. That includes language appropriate resources. It includes local contacts who can be support for them as they navigate what's a very tricky public health situation for all of us to follow, business owners included, trying to follow all of the guidelines and orders that are out there. So really important piece of this puzzle and a lot of work yet to be done.
Great, thanks, Kate. And Duke, maybe as a little bit of a follow-up to Kate's comments, can you talk a little bit about how ranchers and growers are addressing on-farm safety during COVID, and maybe just really what it's like on a day-to-day basis, even before the situation?
Yeah, so I kind of touch on what I said earlier, and again, it feels like we're on the outside looking in. We are taking the same precautions when we mix communities. If we go to town for groceries, doctor's visits, anything like that, it's just being kind of hyper aware of not shaking people's hands, trying to maintain a safe distance, trying to limit time indoors. When we go to town, out on the ranch, we've been pretty good about consolidating our grocery runs and minimizing trips, because there's about 20 people that live on the ranch. My sister, her family, and then the leather shop, and then various people on the ranch crew. But we're kind of in our own little bubble out here, so we still see people relatively closely. If someone has to go to, you know, a funeral or wedding now that they're having them again, when they come back to the ranch, we are putting people kind of in a 10-day quarantine, so that they don't, you know, if it gets one of us, it's nearly guaranteed to go through our whole crew and kind of shut things down, and we can't really afford to do that. It's a really busy time of year. The cattle's needs for water are the highest of the year. So we really are trying to be vigilant about it. And fortunately, you know, 90% of our work is outside. So we're very fortunate in that regard. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Great. Thanks, Duke. This next question is for Pete and Rosalind, and I'll ask Pete to respond first. But what do you think the future of local food looks like in the coming years? And what do you predict will change long term?
Yeah, well, great question. And I think it looks great. I think it looks the best it's ever looked. As I sort of alluded to earlier, I think there will be lasting change coming out of this. I mean, I think one of the things is a deeper and more meaningful appreciation of our supply chain, and I think people will more effectively vote with their wallets to support local and close in production. You know, we've seen how fragile our supply chain really is. Cheap food, just as plain as day, when there's been these wild swings in the prices. We haven't seen it, and people really appreciate that. You know, our producers is very steady. Our customers have seen that there's much more parity when we don't have all this huge machine feeding us in the same way from far away. So I think we've seen that. I think another change we're going to see is we're seeing working hours and conditions. We put the brakes on early in terms of we were open 12 hours a day, which is too much. It was just too taxing on my team. I was like a frog in a pot that, they put me in, cool water and turned on the heat. And when I realized, especially how taxing those long hours are, and we're done trying. We're open 8 hours a day now, and everybody's getting their shopping done. Everybody's happy, thrilled, and it's a much more sane lifestyle. And I hope that, one of my hopes here is that we all can experience some level of sanity out of this. And maybe this virus is here to teach us something, and maybe that's one of the outcomes. And, sad though it is, I think it could be a really positive outcome. Just for what everybody here does.
Thanks, Pete. And Rosalind?
Yeah, and thanks, Pete. Appreciate those comments and thoughts. And I agree. I think the future of local food is, it becomes even more important than we see now going forward. I think some of the changes that are being made, the online ordering and things like that, some of those things are certainly here to stay. And I think, again, as Pete said, there's this greater appreciation of local food and the important work that our farmers and ranchers do. I think that also local food in the future, it will be and it needs to be more just and equitable, that this healthy, high quality local food, that everyone has access to that, whether they in any way at all, and currently people are beginning to be able to access local food through food pantries and at farmers markets with SNAP and Double Up food bucks. But I think that piece of access to local food, and then just greater justice and equity in our food system, where, as Kate talked about, the challenges that our farm workers and workers in processing facilities are facing. We're seeing the value and the tremendous problems faced by faced by the communities doing that work. And it's something that we need to face head on and ensure that we're valuing the work of everyone in our food system. And I think that there's, as we're seeing, it's possible to see the changes that are, see what's being exposed of the inequities that are there, and begin to make changes to address that. And it's important for all of us to do that as we go forward.
Thanks, Rosalind. And Kate, I'd like to go back to you. What kind of economic problems are farmers and ranchers experiencing because of the pandemic? Is it low prices, bankruptcy, and what are some of the solutions?
Oh man, somebody threw us a ringer on that one. Maybe Duke, you can back me up. I mean, this is a perennial question in ag, right? How do you make money and support your family? And I mean, most farmers and ranchers have, at least one person with an off-farm job or additional income that's, separate from the farm. That holds true through COVID-19, and COVID has added a whole new array of challenges. I mean, Duke alluded to those with, the backups in the system, with processing facilities closing down or reducing operations, and the ripple effect of that. Prices are tough for a lot of folks in a lot of our sectors in ag. Just the general cost of doing business, it costs more, but you're getting less in a lot of circumstances. So our producers are having to get creative. To Rosalind's point, there's a lot of farmers of color and other farmers who deal with persistent challenges, financial challenges, access to financing that can support them in growing their businesses too. So that's another perennial problem that's exacerbated now. Of course, we're starting to see some relief dollars come down, some direct relief. The applications for CFAP opened up. Sorry, the acronym. That's the relief payment from Secretary Perdue, $16 billion that'll be distributed throughout the country. Commodity purchasing has begun through the USDA to support, getting food where it's needed. Some of these things we have yet to see if they're gonna, how much they're gonna support our producers. So we're certainly not sitting on our heels, hoping, expecting that will be the only solution. A lot of this is market-based, and it kind of goes back to what everyone here has said, that we've got to make sure we're building a resilient economic foundation, and that includes marketplaces. It includes, the supply chain, distribution, storage, kind of what those structures look like, and how they support folks up and down the supply chain, especially our producers who are, really struggling in a lot of ways. And I should mention mental health is another one that's intimately tied with, the financial stress that a lot of our producers are facing. We just a couple weeks ago announced a sort of renewed, revamped effort to support mental health around the state and make sure our rural communities and ag communities have confidential access to resources, which we do through our partnership with the Colorado Crisis Hotline. So, it's all interconnected, as I know you know, and the financial strain of COVID, I think I would say, are new variables to a perennial problem of how do family farmers and ranchers access the resources they need and stay in business.
Thanks, Kate. Duke, anything to add on to that for Kate before we move on?
Yeah, I think so. And it's just really short, and it's kind of been a general theme so far, but I think speaking to consumers, if we can get people to care more about where their food comes from and knowing their producers, I think that will go a long way in the long run towards fixing a problem. A lot of the problems that we're faced with on the production side is there are a lot of middlemen and some heavy players there. So if we can get back towards local and kind of regional, where people in town care about what's happening out here, why it's happening, how it's happening, I think that goes a long way now and in the future for our industry across the board.
Thanks, Duke. Rosalind, what steps, I think this is a question that we've been getting a lot lately with the farmers markets opening, but what steps are being made to give consumers guidance and confidence to attend farmers markets this year?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as far as, we're telling the story, CFMA is, and then market managers are doing a fantastic job messaging to customers about the protocols that are being put in place. That this is, farmers markets are not operating as usual in a crowded space with a lot of people, that there's social distancing measures being implemented. Again, farmers markets are adaptable, in that we can spread out how far apart booths are and change the configurations. And it's a lot of work to do that. And vendors may not be in the same prized location that they always had. And so it's important for customers to, if you don't find your favorite farmer in their usual spot, to look a little further, because the market configuration may have needed to be changed to put these protocols in place so that you can shop safely at the market. But I think just knowing the Colorado Farmers Market Association recommendations and toolkit for markets is out there with public health agencies and with market managers, and is being used as a guide by every farmers market that I've spoken with, and people are really, market managers are taking this really seriously in cooperation with local public health agencies to create spaces that are safe to shop. And you know that when you're shopping with at a farmer's market from a local producer, that there's been one or two people maybe that have handled that product before you get it, and you're in an outdoor environment. So those are that messaging to customers. When I've spoken with the media, getting that message out there. We're seeing that people are coming.
And I will add too, Rosalind, that we've included a link to your farmers market guidance on our coloradoproud.org website. So people go to coloradoproud.org. We have a whole page of COVID-related resources for food and agricultural businesses, and we have included that on there if people are interested.
Great, thank you. Yes, and Wendy and the CDA also, we worked with them, and they created a guidance document for customers, how to be a good farmers market citizen. So thank you for that also.
Thank you, Rosalind, appreciate it. Pete, this is gonna make you give me a list here, but what are the top 5 ways that consumers can support local agriculture in 2020? So give us a countdown.
Oh man, top 5 ways. I know your farmer, know your food, know your grocer. If your grocer knows farmers, be aware, read labels, and pay attention, and make that vote, right? So was that 1 or was that 4? Sorry. But I think it's a consciousness factor. We got to keep the money local. I mean, this direct buying stuff, I mean, obviously we're not a direct, we don't do that, but we support that. I mean, it's a way for farmers to get a higher price. Customer gets great value. We've got our robust online thing. It's, that's farmers are going to adapt that. Creatures on the planet. They're amazing. And I'm not good at lists. I'm sorry. I think the big thing is pay attention, ask questions, and understanding the impact that it has to make those dollars. Make the most of those dollars. It's just an incredibly huge impact on our local economy. It's huge. We're keeping so much more of that money local by people making those choices to shop with locally owned and locally sourced businesses, locally supplied businesses. Again, I'm terrible at lists. I'm sorry.
No, you did great.
I think I failed that question.
No, oh, that's good.
Sorry.
No, it's great. And I think something that we've been seeing a lot with our farmers and ranchers in our communities, we're seeing a lot of people just help out where they can and make donations or volunteer or reach out to those in need or pick up the phone and check on somebody. And Duke, I think you've been involved, your business in providing some donations to your community. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, real quick before we jump, I think you nailed it, Pete. And I think remembering, Pete's grocery store didn't run out of food, so remembering that as we move forward. So for us, when this first came up, we, like I said, we're on the outside looking in. That's my theme for the talk. But you know, we wanted to contribute. We saw people suffering, hurting, finding hardship. So it started out just a conversation. My dad, my sister, and I trying to do something, and we sent out an email to our audience, our following. I think it was on Facebook or our mail list. Asking, went through the local school districts as well, trying to find families who were in need of ground beef. That's the product we have. We can get it. We thought easily, so we had about 800 families respond, I think, to that initial request. So we're immediately overwhelmed and trying to figure out how to do it. So then it was calling processing plants, the local ones, and I think I made it through 8 different ones in northern New Mexico, in the mountains, Salida, Canyon City, Westcliff, all around, and finally found someone up north in Simla who was willing to open his place on their time off to see our animals get ground for donation. I think next weekend will be our I think 7th weekend doing it, and we will be at 20 animals given away. To that first list is kind of all we've been able to get through, and now the hard part is again finding more processing. So it's a very small thing. We give each family 10 pounds of meat, but if it's available in the stores and the price of it helps somebody out, you know, just for a day, makes their day better. Hopefully it's contributing something. So it's very small against the whole pandemic COVID situation, but we feel like it's our duty to help if and when we can.
Well, thanks, Duke, and thanks to all the producers out there. I know they always make a difference, but I think they're even making a bigger difference now. We certainly appreciate it and don't want to take it for granted. So I'm going to, finish up here with one final question to have each of you answer. And I'd like briefly, what good has come from these pandemic times, or what do you hope sticks around? And Pete, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I sort of alluded to it earlier. I really think that we all are going to have a more of a sane approach to our lives. I really believe that. I think that we're going to see a lot more. I keep saying sanity is the word that just pops into my head on this thing. You know, we've all been running so hard and chasing. And I think the consumer has shifted, right? I think that the consumer had been expecting us to be everyone always. That goes for, the farmers, ranchers, and restaurants out there where we're the first people come to for donations as well. And we are all, really in typically really marginal businesses. I think that there's just an incredible and thankfulness that has erupted out of, what is a really terrible situation and chaos. But I really think that the people who are really paying attention are even more so, and they're spreading the word. I just come back to not running out. We didn't run out of bread because we make it, and people have so much of an appreciation for that. And I think that these, I like to say that these are times when relationships are tested and lifelong bonds are forged. And we've tested a lot of relationships, and most have passed the test. And I know that we are forging lifelong bonds, and I think the same is true on this call. Everybody's working double, triple, quadruple time on our ends from a leadership standpoint to keep the thing moving. And I really think that people have recognized that and will appreciate it long into the future. I believe that will be it.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Rosalind, how about you?
Sure, I have a list of three things, and one is this greater appreciation of local food as not just a nice thing, but an absolute necessity. an appreciation of our farmers and ranchers and food system workers in that. The collaboration that's come about that is even in ways that weren't, there's been plenty of collaboration before, but there's new collaborations that have been forming between individuals, organizations, agencies. CFMA we're on the steering committee for the Colorado Farm and Food Systems Response Team, which has brought together a network of local food systems, different organizations and institutions to develop a rapid response to support producers through this time. And the collaborations and conversations and work that's come out of that has been really important. And then also another thing that is challenging and really critical is the exposure of systemic inequities that's been made so much clearer during this time. And it's that exposure and the will to address them that I hope will continue.
Thanks, Rosalind. And Duke, how about you?
Yeah, I'll go quickly because I know we're getting close. But on the beef industry and on a larger level, there's a lot of holes, kind of flaws in it, and this pandemic has shed some light and kind of began some things in motion. I hope that those kind of keep rolling, gain momentum, and really have a look at it. I think philosophically, I think it sometimes takes a really bad situation to kind of gain some perspective and start taking joy in the smaller things, and not being so needy. Like Pete was saying, people aren't price checking, you know, they just want a product. So taking joy in the tangible, in the here and now, and that of care for the producers, for the grocers, for the whole supply chain. I'm not just expecting a perfect product at a cheap price, but understanding the whole cycle, the whole picture. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Duke. And Kate, why don't you finish this out?
I don't think I have much more to say after what's been said. It's spot on. You know, I think just local food matters, and knowing your farmer, knowing your food matters for so many reasons we've talked about. I think the bigger picture too is that the more that we support our family farmers and ranchers and everyone who works throughout the supply chain here in Colorado, that means we're supporting our local businesses, which means we're supporting Main Street, which means we're supporting schools and, you know, communities all across rural and urban Colorado. So really, everything we're talking about isn't just about having delicious, healthy, fresh food, and, you know, and having that consumer choice. It really does touch on so many of the fundamental pieces of what make our communities go around and what build community resilience. And I'd add to, Pete mentioned the sanity portion. I hope he's right. I hope we find some greater sanity as we're building a stronger Colorado throughout all this, that we find ways to slow down, talk to our neighbors, check in on people, make sure that everyone's doing all right as we do some really big work and rethink, you know, how do we grow from here in a way that benefits farming, ranching, and all who work in agriculture in Colorado.
Thanks, Kate. I think that pretty much wraps it up for our time today. I think we covered a lot of ground in the hour that we shared together. I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists for taking time out of their incredibly busy and demanding schedules to share their insights today. And I hope all of you who are listening got something out of our conversation today. I want to thank everybody who submitted questions and who joined us virtually to learn about how businesses and can adapt during these unprecedented times. And we know they're challenging, but hopefully there were some good insights today to help you. Colorado Proud and the Department of Agriculture are always here to support all aspects of the agriculture community. So I just encourage you to reach out to us if there are things that we can do for you, or if there are questions that you might have. Please do keep an eye on our coloradoproud.org website for very current information related to COVID. We'll be posting the recording of this roundtable, as well as questions and answers and other resources in the coming days. And also, I want to mention that this is first in a series of events. So please be on the lookout too for upcoming events for Colorado Proud and continuing this conversation. But thank you all again. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your continued support. Be well, be safe, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully all in person someday soon. So thank you again. Have a great day.